Hello, my name is Marcin Kuśmierczyk and I'm from Poland, and I'm an author of an independent online program about international politics. And today I'll have a pleasure of talking to Malin Björk. Unfortunately, we will talk about a very serious topic, human trafficking, something that for many Europeans may sound like a marginal problem or problem of the past or problem of some distant countries. Unfortunately, it is still a reality of our European Union, and Union wants to change that by creating new law. So before we get into specifics, could you please tell us more about the main objectives, main goals of this new law?
Actually, it is a revision of an already existing directive from 2011. But as with all law, it was time to update this European law. And as you also pointed out, this is something that we would have hoped should be eradicated. But trafficking in human beings, and in particular trafficking in women and girls for sexual exploitation, continues to be a serious issue in the European Union. And we also see that the responses that we've had so far have not been efficient and effective enough. So that's the background to the proposal to revise the directive. And I can discuss with you a little bit more the main points of that revision later on.
Yes, and you are talking about the position of European Parliament. But could you please tell us where are we with this law when it comes to legislative process? Because I've read through the proposals of European Parliament, but I also read a position of European Council from May, if I remember correctly. And goals may be similar, but these are two very much different approaches, different legal acts. So could you tell us about the main contention points between Parliament and countries and between European Council? And is it possible that this whole procedure will not come into conclusion because the parliamentary term is coming to an end?
Well, if I start by the last, I would say, doubt or fears that some people might have when it relates to the legislative processes in line here now, it goes for this file, but then for many others. That of course we have this end date of the end of this legislature, where if we are not finished, a new parliament, a new commission will have, and a new, the council continues as it is, but have to pick up this file. So on the one hand, I think, and I strongly believe that we will be able to finish during this legislature. We have now the Spanish presidency negotiating very hard with us, and then we will have the Belgian presidency. So I'm quite optimistic. But should that not happen, then the legislative file will belong to the next parliament and to the next co-legislators. So that's one point. But the other point is that, of course, as in many files, the European Parliament and the Council, we have different positions. We have made different emphasis, and we are also have, I would say, in this case, very different levels of ambition when it boils down to it. And in me, together with my co-rapporteur, Maria Eugenia Rodriguez Palop from Spain, and from the Gender Equality Committee here in the European Parliament, I'm from the Civil Liberties Committee, we decided very early that we wanted to be a little bit more ambitious than the Commission proposal. We want, to be more ambitious when it comes to prevention. So preventing this crime from happening in the first place. And that means a set of actions that we have to engage in. It means that we have to work with education, awareness raising. We have to strengthen gender equality mechanism. We have to strengthen child protection mechanism so that women, girls, and children do not even end up in this situation. We have to put more responsibility on online platforms, etc. So that's one of the parts. More ambitious Parliament position compared to the Council. And then the other is protection of victims. When the crime happens, what are their services? What are their protection? What is the support to victims? How do we treat victims? And what impact that does have for the capacity of law enforcement to actually make a real difference. Because we have, all our experience and reports show that if we're successful in supporting and protection, support and protection to victims, law enforcement can do a better job because, these are communicating elements. And then the third one would be also then prosecution. And prosecution, in order to that to be effective, again, If we can work better and have some better legislation in terms of prosecuting the users of trafficking victims, to go after legal entities, so a company or a legal entity that is taking part in this exploitation, they would be legally liable. So issues like this, we have put the ambition a little bit higher in the parliament. Now we're negotiating where we're going to end up. So I'm hopeful we will be able to finish, but it's clear that we do start, as is often the case, these two institutions with a little bit different points.
Of course, any case of human trafficking is a great tragedy, but could you please tell us more about the scale of this problem, how big it is, and is it on the rise, or maybe we are heading into the right direction, but we need to move faster?
I think I'm always careful with figures, but it's clear that we see that this is a phenomenon where there is a lot of non-reported cases. So the reported cases, I would say, is just the more visible part of the problem. We know that there is a lot of more trafficking going on. And I think what we do know is that we have, of course, trafficking from outside the EU into the EU, but we have more than half is inside the EU, because trafficking is, a crime that involves deceit. It means, and that you are luring victims into this, coercion, and these issues. And you don't have to be outside the EU for this to happen. I think this is typically a crime that strives on people's vulnerability, and your vulnerability is a consequence of many issues. It can be of gender inequality, of lack of opportunities. It can be of lack of child protection mechanisms. It can be sometimes because of racism, of marginalization of certain communities, and that makes you vulnerable for traffickers. They will go and they will profit from that vulnerability. But in the end, there's also somebody using. And the user, in this new proposal from the Commission and also from the Parliament, we want to criminalize the knowing use of services of trafficking victims, because the vulnerability wouldn't end up in a crime unless the user was in the other end, situation. And typically, the Parliament position, for example, the majority of trafficking in human beings in Europe is for sexual exploitation. So, trafficked women into brothels and to be exploited and abused. And in that, we in the Parliament position, we say very clearly that the sex buyers, the ones that go into there and that they buy women and girls that are victims of trafficking, they should be directly legally liable for that. And some countries, they are against that direct legal liability, but I strongly believe that is the way forward, because in countries like Sweden, like Norway, Ireland, countries where we have criminalized the purchase of sexual services, trafficking has also gone down. And what we are proposing is that even if those countries that don't want to criminalize all forms of sex buying, which I think would be the right thing to do, but if at least all countries should criminalize the buying of sexual services of a trafficking victim. So that should be a minimum standard. But we are having negotiations with Council on this, and some member states are not on board.
Okay, I understand that this is not your position, but could you please explain the logic behind not wanting purchasing of sex? I don't know how to even put that. I mean, what's the logic behind the opposition towards such a law to prohibit people from buying, sex workers that are victims of human traffickers? I mean, what's the reasoning? What's the logic behind this opposition?
I think the big reason for that is that they have a very strong, countries like Germany, Netherlands, but also to some extent Belgium, have a very strong institutionalized prostitution industry. And they are strong voices, because in the end, even, I think no woman's body should be commodified. I think that's the best way to protect all women, of different walks of life. But at least we should be able to agree on that. It should not be possible, or it should be prohibited to buy a sex trafficking victim. The reasons that they come up with, I don't think they're not logical, they're not reasonable. It's just a position that doesn't make sense. And I think countries like Germany is willing to move in our direction, in the direction of the European Parliament position. We will see how it goes. But in the end, whatever the outcome of this negotiations are, in the end, countries will be able to adopt more progressive legislation. And I think, progressive in this sense must be to safeguard the rights of girls and women not to be abused.
Hearing from member of European Parliament that the position of some countries in the European Council can be led by industry of prostitution is scary. I think it should be scary for many Europeans, especially young Europeans and women. But you told something about technology, and technology is of course something that changes everything. It changes also how human traffickers operate. So how we should adapt to that, what we should do, and how this new law is going to address that.
Yeah, just to come back to, I'm not saying that this interest in the prostitution industry, that they would run the political affairs of things. That's not the situation. But I think people are naive about the situation in brothels, and that some people don't want to see the abuse that actually goes on there. So I think that's maybe more part of the problem. But when it comes to the online dimension, I think it's very clear that a lot of trafficking goes on there. That's where the traffickers go to find the vulnerability of people, of young, even minors, of people that are in a vulnerable situation. So we have to make sure that we articulate that responsibility also, and that if you as a user also then are having this online, the abuse starts online, we can be able to act also on that level. Again, this is a sector that is sensitive for member states to regulate around, and we also have other legal instruments, the Digital Services Act and others, and we also have to make sure that we don't overlap and make contradictory legislation. So we are working on that, but it's very clear. I think it's clear for law enforcement that, of course, we have to work with the online dimension more actively.
So human trafficking is almost by definition an international problem. So it seems impossible for European Union to solve this problem without cooperation of European countries. So what should we do to urge countries to really cooperate on this matter, to cooperate so that we can really eliminate this? You cannot eliminate this procedure in one country. So what can we do to push countries to cooperate?
I think we see quite good cooperation with third countries, actually, on the issue of trafficking, because it's like with the intra-EU trafficking, which is the majority, as I said. But the external EU, it's the same. You have people in vulnerability situation, and then there is a demand that is that wants to use this vulnerability. So as the European Union, of course, we have to work to reduce vulnerability of the countries of origin, and that means to support gender equality, to support livelihood projects, etc. But we also then have to work with the demand reduction in the European Union, and it means to work when it comes to trafficking for labor exploitations, to work with trade unions to make sure that we don't have labor exploitation of trafficking victims in Europe in 2023. It means that we have to use the different tools to say, well, you cannot abuse women trafficking victims in prostitution. So we have to be clear about reducing the demand, but at the same time reducing vulnerability in third countries.
MEP Malin Björk, thank you so much for your time. And my name is Marcin Kuśmierczyk. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye and see you next time.
Thank you.